Monday here in California at the Insight Meditation Center. And so we just finished the 25-part introduction to mindfulness meditation, and I have in mind to continue with that, and with that series, or part 2 of it. And we'll start here with this meditation. And so the simplest idea of mindfulness meditation is to be aware of what's happening as it's happening. And not to do a checklist approach, but to take the time to connect to whatever is predominant, to really know it well. And that can be over a course of one breath, a few breaths, where we allow ourselves to feel and sense and know what's happening. And sometimes it's panoramic and just everything coming and going, and sometimes it's centering on something for a little bit, so there's a settling, a concentration here. So the breathing works this way, that we're here centering ourselves on the inhale and the exhale, knowing the inhale and exhale, and feeling it, being with it. Sometimes it's body sensations, sometimes it's emotions, sometimes it's thoughts, sometimes it's sounds. And then, as I recommended in the intro series, to let the breathing be the default, the place where we're cultivating stability. In addition to that, being present, for being mindful of everything, one very useful thing to be aware of, as you're aware of anything, as you're aware of breathing, the body, emotions, thoughts, is to recognize if there's any wanting of something or not wanting something. The movements of wanting and not wanting. So even in the middle of being aware of something, is there some subtle or maybe not so subtle wanting a better breathing, wanting to get concentrated, wanting to be a good meditator? If there's an ache in the knee, is there a not wanting? And the idea is to really take time to recognize that, to feel it, not be troubled by the wanting or not wanting, but also not give preference to it, not let it influence the simple moment-to-moment awareness. And how not to make it influence it is to include it as something to be known. Oh, so just simply to note, either a note in the mind or just a nonverbal recognition. This is wanting. Wanting is present. And then continue to practice. So the wanting also is in the domain of everything. Sometimes wanting or not wanting is kind of like the stage director who's off stage. And the audience doesn't see what the stage director is telling people to do, but the stage director is somehow in charge. The idea is everyone's on stage, and so wanting, not wanting is also brought on the stage so we can see it clearly. So that's the instructions for today. So to assume a meditation posture. And to gently close your eyes. And sometimes wanting is useful. So as you sit here and begin, see if you can bring forth a gentle wanting to be here, present, to be at this place, at this time, aware of your experience. to enter a deeper relationship with the present moment, sitting here. And gently taking some long, slow, deep breaths, relaxing as you exhale. Relaxing the shoulders with a long exhale. Releasing the belly on a long exhale. Letting breathing return to normal. And continue to relax on the exhale, softening throughout the body. And then centering yourself on breathing, as if the breathing is the center of all things. And then as you sit here meditating today, keep a lookout for the arising of desire, of wanting and not wanting. And maybe each thing that you're aware of in the moment, check it out and see, is there any desire, wanting or not wanting, in relationship to it? And if there is, know it clearly that desire is present. And know it in such a way that you are not caught in the desire. So the desire is just a part of the landscape of your present moment experience. what wanting or not wanting is operating in the foreground, in the background. And what I'd like to know it clearly instead of going along with it by thinking about it. And then as we come to the end of this sitting, to maybe take a moment to distinguish between different kinds of desires you might have in relationship to other people. There's the desire to want something from them, and there's also the desire to want something for them. It might be easier to see that the desire to want something from them serves yourself. A desire for them serves them. And the feeling of the two, the way these two operate in our bodies and minds and hearts, can be very different. And for the next couple of minutes, to consider the desires you have for the well-being of others, how you wish them well. Where does that desire come from within you? How does that desire arise so that it has a healthy feeling to it, a goodness to it, a simplicity that is a wishing but not a needing, a desire but not an attachment. And as you breathe, maybe breathing through your heart center, imagine that in your exhale, you are spreading your well-wishing into the world. In front of you, behind you, to the side of you, in all directions. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free. And may each of us, our well-wishing of others, be good for our own hearts to have. A healthy generosity of care for others. May all beings be happy. Thank you. So welcome to this Monday Dharma talk, which is now beginning of part 2 of the introduction to mindfulness meditation. And for this week, I would like to talk about the hindrances. There's 5 hindrances. And people who do mindfulness meditation one of the kind of standard things to do is to become well familiar with how the hindrances work in us. And the value is that we want to understand what hinders our ability to be aware, to be mindful. And this is a wonderful principle that the very thing that is the obstacle becomes the practice. So rather than letting it remain the obstacle that hinders awareness, because we get pulled into train thoughts of the hindrances, we turn around and make the hindrances the object of the mindfulness. And what's brilliant about that is that it doesn't require the hindrances to go away to reestablish mindfulness. We establish mindfulness on the very challenge we have. And this is one of the important principles of Vipassana practice in general. It is not an avoidant practice, but rather a practice that turns towards, that stands near, stands next to what's happening and able to accompany it, to see it, to know it, without becoming it, without being entangled with it. And so, so rather than being upset when we can't be mindful, it's just not being able to be mindful is an indication that we need to turn our attention to something different than we have been paying attention to the very thing that's making it difficult. So if there's a lot of thinking, for example, that takes people away, then we want to practice mindfulness of thinking. But sometimes even that's not enough. And sometimes what's propelling the thinking, what's propelling our caught-upness, is some form of desire, some form of hindrance. And there's 5 hindrances. Desire is the first. More technically, it's sensual desire. The second is aversion, so not wanting something to go away. And the third is usually translated as sloth and torpor, but in that it kind of fits the hindrance of fear quite a bit. It might be more appropriate to translate it as sloth and rigidity, or rigidity and torpor. And then there is restlessness and regrets, and then there's doubt. So these are the 5, 7 actually, but 2 of them are pairs. And so desires are an important part of life, and they the very thing which trips us up in our lives. Desires free us from trouble, and desires put us in trouble. And so desires are multifaceted, and beginning to recognize desires as desires is phenomenally helpful. If you can recognize the desires as desires, then you have a chance then to feel and sense and experience what it's like having the desire. And some desires, in and of themselves, feel like our freedom is compromised. Feels like that we're caught in something. We're being compelled, being pushed. It's almost like we lose our self-determination because a desire overwhelms us. It's so, compelling us to act in a certain way. Other forms of desire do not limit our freedom, doesn't limit our capacity to stay grounded and centered here. It actually supports it. It supports us to be centered, supports us to be present, and the feeling of those desires can feel even nourishing. They can feel right. They can feel like they're part and parcel of a centered, grounded way of being, alive and present. And the second desire is connected to mindfulness, that what we're trying to do in mindfulness is to establish awareness here. The foundation of mindfulness, foundation of awareness, is stability, this being here in a clear way, so that we're abiding, living in awareness, not abiding in the desires, not abiding in the thoughts that we're having, And so when thinking and desires get merged, then we can be in trouble, because then the mind gets kind of swept away in thought, propelled by the desire. And if there's a lot of attachment together with the desire, then the thinking can become compulsive. And when the thinking is compulsive, then sometimes the behavior becomes compulsive too. The pressure is so strong. And one of the things that happens with these compulsive desires, and that compelled is thinking a lot, is that we get caught in the hindrance of desire. And as I said, it's often translated as the hindrance of sensual desire. Sometimes it's just, in the ancient text, it's also described as the hindrance of acquisitiveness, wanting to have something, and to acquire something for myself. And of course, it's okay to acquire things that are healthy for us, and when we acquire them in healthy ways. But it's the greed, the clinging, the grasping, the compulsion, the pushing that becomes the hindrance that makes it difficult to be present, difficult to be centered here, difficult to stay aware, as opposed to being pulled away into the train cars of thinking over and over again. So what we want to be able to do is begin to recognize when desires are there. And desires are there a lot, so it shouldn't be too difficult to begin recognizing desires. In the course of your daily life, you might stop a few times, maybe on the hour, every hour, and just have some kind of alarm that goes off, and then say, what desire am I involved in right now? If you find yourself in a supermarket, well, there is some desire that got you there. You're looking for something to buy. You want something there. It's maybe every aisle you're on, you're looking for what you want. You're you're searching. There's nothing wrong with that, but what's the quality and the nature of that desire? Does it feel, if you really check in about how you're desiring, does it feel relaxed and easy? Does it feel nice and comfortable? Or is it tight and stressful to have it? If you find yourself driving your car, what is the nature of desire there? And if you're driving fast, does that tell you something about how you're living in your desires? If you're driving with a lot of impatience, does that tell you something about the nature of your desires? If you, are doing anything at all, if you're talking on the phone or answering an email, what desires are operating there? And does that desire that you have, does it feel good to have? Or when you really pay attention to it, it's stressful and strainful. There's desires all the time, and you can get tied up in knots if you look at every desire carefully. But to begin becoming cognizant of desires so that you can begin centering yourself on desires which are healthy. And you'll learn to recognize when they're not good for you or for other people. And then you learn, because you learn to become familiar with them and you know them well, what they feel like, slowly you learn how to be free of desires. And ideally we're free of both good desires and bad desires, healthy and unhealthy ones. The healthy ones too, it's possible to have clinging and grasping. But we want to, even healthy ones, we want to hold lightly and present, act on if it's appropriate. So sitting in meditation, then, one of the things to become aware of is the functioning of desire. And as I said, part of the reason to sit and become calm and centered and stable here, maybe something that happens over the course of a meditation session, one of the functions of that is so once we're stable, then we're going to have a vantage point in which to feel or sense or experience desires when they arise. We can see them there. Oh, now there's a wanting. There's thoughts, not just thinking going on, but there's thoughts driven by desire. Fantasies are thoughts driven by desires usually. And so you might, from the beginning of this, just keep it very simple. Just recognize that, oh, there's a desire. as opposed to deciding exactly what the desire is. Maybe that can be for later. But see what kind of freedom comes, but just really clearly recognizing this is a desire. I'm not proposing this to make your meditation busy, do a lot of searching and looking and analyzing, but the idea is once you're kind of arrived and centered and stable here, then you might want to be on the lookout. Keep an eye out for it. Or it might be most useful before you become centered. Because the very thing that's keeping you from beginning into the present moment and makes it difficult when you first sit down is because the spinning of your thoughts is driven by some strong desire. And it might be useful to sit down and see, oh, look at that. No wonder it's hard to be settled right now. There's a desire that's very compelling and compulsive that's still carrying with me. Desire to think something or figure something out or plan something. Planning is usually a desire. And so I'll repeat this very important principle, that the very thing that makes it difficult to be mindful, that's the thing to be mindful of. And one of those things can be desire. And that's one of the key places in meditation where you want to check in and see, where's the desire here? That is, when you're not able to be easily present, the mind's drifting off a lot, then check in. What's the desire that's operating in here? There's some way of clearly recognizing, knowing the desire, feeling it in your body, that where it begins to lose its grip on you, and maybe then becomes easier to continue with your meditation. So thank you very much, and so we'll continue with the hindrances this week.